It's time for Daniel in the Deacon's Den.
Yes, I heard the lion roar. Deacon Dan Brahier, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty
Doing
good.
great. Thank
All
you
things
very
considered.
much. Wish I could have gone on this big retreat you just had for the deacons and their wives. Can't wait to hear all about that.
Yeah, we did. We had last weekend. We had our. It's actually we've been doing it every 2 years. So when I started at the in the position that I'm in right now, overseeing deacons 4 years ago, we realized that we had not had a retreat for deacons and their wives together for a long time, and decided to kind of reinstitute that. And we gave it kind of its first whirl 2 years ago, and went very well and well received. And the feedback was, start doing this every couple of years. So that's what we do. So we had a retreat offered for deacons and their wives. We held it down at Maria Stein Retreat Center, and it was so popular, in fact, that unfortunately the bad news is that we had more men and their wives apply or to sign up than we actually had room for. So we had to have a wait list and couldn't get everybody in. But it was we spent a Friday through Sunday, and our presenters that kind of directed the retreat are a couple from the Archdiocese of Detroit, and I was aware that they had done a number of retreats up there for deacons and wives and families and so forth. So they bring a really unique angle to this whole thing. Dr. Tim Hogan is a clinical psychologist, and so his background is actually in doing therapy for marriage, and so his specialty is on what makes marriage work and how to navigate that. And his wife, Karen, is a DRE at a parish up there, and she's also a spiritual director. So you get kind of this really interesting mix. As some of the participants put it, it was kind of a mix of head and heart. Dr. Tim gave us a lot of the head of what's going on in terms of our decision-making and communication and things like that. But then Karen would give us a little bit more of the heart of, how does that feel to us, and what kinds of things can we do to strengthen our partnership and our relationship. So it was just a really a good set of presentations that they gave throughout the weekend. But the weekend also included praying the Liturgy of the Hours each day. We prayed the hours together, morning, evening, night. We had daily Mass. We had Eucharistic adoration. And there's a lot of space built into the schedule that gave couples an opportunity to walk the grounds and talk. And, so often in our lives, we don't have time for that. I mean, when do we actually sit down and have the conversation with how are things going in ministry, and how can we organize ourselves a little bit better, and so forth. And so it wasn't really so much of an intense retreat, if you will. It was more of a relaxing retreat, and just an opportunity to share and just spend time together. Probably my biggest takeaway of the weekend from them, which I think is so true in ministry in general, for anybody who does ministry in a parish, or for the diocese, if you're working on a parish staff, whether you're a deacon or a DRE or whatever it is, that it's important for a married couple to have a plan, to have a mission statement, if you will, for their marriage. And so they kind of taught us how to do that. Some things that we can say, here are a list of statements that are non-negotiables that we agree on, that kind of defines what our mission is as a married couple. Because it's so easy, deacons in particular, we can lose sight of that. We're so focused on our ministry and our jobs, that our marriage can kind of almost get lost in the shuffle. There's all this other stuff that's going on. So they called us to task to sit back a little bit and say, okay, really, what are our priorities as a married couple, and how does that fit with the life of being a deacon? There is no question about it that our wives are critical, necessary for our vocation as deacons. And they're critical to our formation process, to our discernment process, for our ministry after ordination. I always like to think of it that our wives are a voice of reason, in our lives. They keep us honest, and they ensure that we have the right balance of, in ministry as we go. I think I've mentioned on the air before that there was a bishop up in Michigan who said sometimes you'll find the voice of God sounds surprisingly like your wife.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, right.
And that's kind of what it is, you know. So really what this does, it gave us an opportunity to just tune into that, of what is that voice of reason telling me. And I remember the first couples retreat that we did when I came in the office. Father Jeff Walker was the director of, and he made a statement in that retreat that stuck with me. He said, you know, we sometimes hear about deacons and their wives having to have a balance of what they do. But he said, I really don't think balance is the right word. He said the right word is integration. You know, you have two different vocations. Our first vocation is to our wives and our family, and then the diaconate is a second vocation. But he said, don't try to balance them, try to integrate them. How do I build my marriage relationship through what I do as a deacon? And how do I build my diaconal relationship with parishioners through what I do in my marriage? How do those pieces integrate together? So it's just really important, I think, to step back once in a while and have those kind of retreat opportunities. And so we offer those every other year with the idea that that the retreats will help to keep us grounded and make sure that our wives and us are working hand in hand in our ministry.
Well, a permanent diaconate is a partnership, really.
Yes, it definitely is, and it's an extension, really, of, you know, our first vows to our wives. Then you take the second set of vows, if you will, to the church, and it is trying to integrate and figure out how do I best serve both family and church. They are related to each other, but they're separate missions, if you will.
Circling back around to something that was spoken to the couples there, a married couple needs to have a plan, a mission statement. Obviously, that doesn't just apply to couples who have the man involved in diaconate, right? It might help to focus that, but that would be a good idea for all married couples, right?
Yeah, definitely. And he would tell us, because, again, if you think of his role as a clinical psychologist, he works with marriages all the time. That's his life. And frankly, oftentimes working with marriages that are falling apart.
Right.
You know, and what went wrong, and how do we build this, and how do we, and so he was giving us some very practical advice for that. And I would agree. I think that what it did for us is just sort of forced us to sit down with a piece of paper. Essentially what he did is he had he had me and he had my wife, and all the couples. We would make a list of, here are some things that are priorities that I think we should be doing or thinking about. And then you compare the lists, and you kind of, anything that you both had on the list, you check that off or you circle it.
That's good.
And then if there's something that was on my list but not hers, why didn't she mention it? And why was it a priority to me? And if it was on her list but not mine, why was it important to her but I didn't think it was that important? And so it gets you into that deep discussion. And we didn't get it done during the retreat. It wasn't until a couple of days later that we sat back down with it, which he encouraged all of us to do in the living room in the evening, saying, hey, let's revisit this again. What did we write down at the retreat, and what, to try to tweak it into a final document, if you will. And what he recommends is, once you have that mission statement of things that you agree and believe in, print it out and put it on the bathroom mirror or something, so that every day you see that list and see, are we actually doing what we said we're going to do.
I just have a curious mind, Deacon Dan, but I'm just wondering, in your own circumstance, and I would bet it would be similar to the rest, how much of your list was in common with your wife?
Yeah. I mean, and so much of it was, and I think that's one of the things that we all discovered at the retreat, that we are on the same page. Not to every degree, everything that's there. But I can almost guarantee you that when he is doing therapy for couples that are struggling, and they make that list, they probably don't have many matches at all. And that's exactly the point. It starts to say, okay, what is the common ground, and what can we be working on? Even you could almost take that idea and broaden it to anything. Like, for example, at work, what if you and your boss sit down and do that? And I make a list of things that I see as priorities in my job every day, and he makes a list of things that he thinks should be my priorities. We compare those and see, are we both on the same page here? Are we thinking the same thing?
Please
I can
don't
imagine a
give.
deacon doing that with his pastor.
Yes, but don't give Dave any ideas, please.
Yeah, Ron and I did this for
Well,
me.
actually,
I asked that
I
question.
was going to suggest that the two of you may want to do that.
I love it. Fabulous. Great stuff, Deacon Dan. Can't wait to spend some more time with you next Wednesday. We always love hanging out in the Deacon's Den with Deacon Dan Brahier.